702.
The Clement Manyathela Show.
Let's walk the talk.
What I want us to do now, though, is to focus on the African continent, because there are some disturbing developments. I want us to focus on Sudan, focus on Tanzania, and focus on Nigeria as well. In Nigeria, you've got the U.S. President Donald Trump threatening to send the military to Nigeria because he's accusing that government of failing to protect Christians. In fact, Nigeria has been placed on the US's country of particular concern list for religious freedom violations, and it's warned of possible military action. That's the US warning of that if the situation does not change. Nigeria's leaders have since rejected that characterization and stressed that any foreign intervention must respect their sovereignty. And then in Tanzania, you've got mass protests that have been taking place. In fact, they erupted when opposition candidates were barred from the ballot and the ruling party declared a near 100% victory. You look at the capital, Dar es Salaam, there were violent protests there. There are people that have died. A curfew has been imposed. The army was deployed. I've got a friend who's actually in Zanzibar on holiday, and there's just no internet. We were, in fact, worried about this friend's safety because, they were not able to confirm that they had arrived. So the last time we spoke to this person was when they took off. And that's how bad things are. There's just no internet. I've got another friend I've met before in Finland who lives in Tanzania, who actually has fled to South Africa and has been here in South Africa because the situation is just so bad in Tanzania. So we're going to look at that as well. And then I want us to focus on Sudan because the world is watching and we're all surprised as we witness one of Africa's most saddening humanitarian crises. And this is a crisis that has been deepening for some time now. Months of brutal conflict between rival military factions, displacing millions of people, threatening regional stability, raising some really difficult questions about international intervention and the prospects of peace. So let's start this conversation by looking at the situation in Sudan. We've got Abdallah Hussain, who is a Sudanese journalist who is based in Khartoum, who's joining us now via Zoom. Abdallah Hussain, thank you so much for making time for us. I really, really appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning to you and to your viewers, and thank you so much for having me here on 702.
Yeah. Can we maybe start by helping our listeners understand what the background is to what we are seeing in Sudan right now? What has led to this fresh wave of violence and what some are even calling a genocide?
Yes, indeed. It is a genocide by multiple reports from inside and outside abroad. Local and regional and international organizations have labeled this as genocide, crimes against humanity, massacres against specific ethnic groups, and also massacres against citizens. So what was happening in Sudan during the transitional period after throwing the previous regime of Omar al-Bashir? There has been a sovereignty council, which includes the paramilitary leader who's treated as a rebel now, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo Ahmeti, who leads the rebel support forces, and on the other side there has been the leader and the commander in chief of the Sudanese armed forces as the transitional sovereignty council chairman. One thing led to another, and there has been always rumors that the RSF are foreign backed by several states. Some of them are Arab, some of them are international, maybe the EU itself. But nothing happened on the ground until 2023, where the RSF moved and mobilized one of their units to the north of Sudan, and they occupied one of the army's basis on the pretext that there has been foreign soldiers and foreign units on Sudanese soil, which is the Egyptian army. But there has been a lot of mutual interactions between Sudanese army and Egyptian army, so it's not a big deal. So most analysts see this as just the pretext by the rapid support forces to ignite the war. Then one thing led to another, to the full rebellion of the RSF in April 15th, 2023, where they tried to assassinate the president, the chairman of the Transitional Sovereignty Council, head of the army, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. They tried to assassinate him in his living, and they also tried to seize power by seizing and besieging the headquarters of the army, the main headquarters of the army's general command in the center of Khartoum. And since then, until now, there has been multiple clashes on several fronts in the center of Khartoum, in the center of the country, and now the war shifted toward the west, which is happening right now in El Fasher city that has fallen under the RSF control, which is now meaning that the RSF controls the entire Darfur region with all of 5 states in Darfur.
So what's happened like in the last week, for instance? How many people have been killed? I mean, and not so much since, maybe you can give us, if you have the numbers since this fresh war began, but it looks like there's something monumental that also took place last week that was more defining.
Yes. What happened last week for 7 days, it was literally a massacre. The world cannot ignore what happened in the last 7 days. The city of El Fasher is the capital of North Darfur. Okay, it was the last stronghold for the Sudanese army in the region of Darfur. It was besieged by the rapid support forces for more than 18 months. No food, no medicine, no healthcare, nothing at all. It was besieged to pressure the army and pressure the citizens to fall for the city, and then they take the city. After 267 attacks on the city, it finally fell under the rapid support forces. 1 week ago on the 26th of October. And since then, the city is under their control. And what's happening since then was just saddening, a tragedy. The reports and the estimations suggest that in the first 2 days, the 26th and the 27th, more than 2,000 people have been killed inside the city of El Fasher. The city holds inside about 250,000 people who were besieged by the rapid support forces in the city. So far, the people who managed to flee the city were about 70,000, 71,000. That leaves us with nearly 180,000 people are still trapped in the city of Al Fasher. We received reports yesterday that the rapid support forces seized the vehicles inside the city, the 8 vehicles, the vehicles that the refugees and displaced persons are using it to flee the city from the RSF. They seized all of the vehicles, leaving the citizens to walk on their foot. They have been walking for 60 kilometers, 70 kilometers in the desert to reach some safe haven. And so far, there is 180K still remain trapped inside the city.
What is the role of all these external parties? You mentioned earlier the Egyptian army. There have been questions raised about the UAE. Some have been raising questions about Manchester City and all of these parties' involvement in what's happening currently in Sudan. What are you hearing on the ground? Is that of great concern that there may be external influences here agitating this war?
Yes, indeed, that's correct. In matter of fact, there has been confirmed reports that the RSF is being backed by the UAE. And the UK, the US, and several major countries are holding from statements and anything at all, just because the UAE is a strategic partner to the EU countries and to the US. They cannot condemn their own ally. But some voices within the Congress itself, senators and Foreign Relations Committee, they are trying to voice up what's going on. They are trying to pressure the UAE to talk to the RSF, convince them of stop the tragedies and the atrocities they are committing. In matter of fact, there has been multiple reports, multiple pictures, multiple videos showing credible Abu Dhabi weapons with their markers on boxes with the RSF, their uniform, their weaponry, even some documents for Emirati soldiers. So no one can deny at this moment the involvement of the UAE in this matter. And in matter of fact, also there has been some concerns about other countries like Chad, for example, which the UAE is using as a border to deliver aid and to deliver weaponry to the RSF in western of the country. Some of the analysts from the U.S. Expressed their concerns earlier this week, saying that if the UAE stopped supporting the RSF, this war could have ended in matter of days.
Sure, yeah. Abdallah Hussain, thank you so much for speaking to us. He's a Sudanese journalist live to us from Khartoum. I hope you're safe there. I saw the United Nations has called what's happening in Darfur ethnically motivated violations and atrocities on a genocidal scale. Let's hope that what's happening there is not going to be ignored like many, many, many other genocides or wars that happen on the African continent. Let me take you to Nigeria now. This is where you've got Donald Trump, the president of the U.S., threatening military action because he believes that Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria. His own advisor has tried to explain that that's not necessarily the case. There are no killings that are sanctions for Christians. In fact, Muslims are being killed as well. These Islamist organizations are really going after everybody else, but Donald Trump not buying it. And we had a conversation earlier on with Wale Fatade, who is the commissioning editor of The Conversation Africa. He was live to us from Nigeria to give us context on what's happening on the ground. Take a listen. Wale, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning. Morning from Nigeria.
How bad is the situation in Nigeria? Is it the same as the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration is characterizing it in as far as Christians and their lives are concerned?
Well, the attacks are pretty much localized to certain areas, but the fact remains that Christians are under attacks. But at another level, non-Christians too are under attack by terrorists. But that's a fact. So it's up to the government of Nigeria to protect its own citizens. But President Trump has not lied in as far as Christians being under attack in specific locations, not across the entire country.
Yeah, who's attacking the Christians, and is it only the Christians being attacked, or is it other religious groups as well?
Other religious groups are under attack as well, but the Christians are being under focus because of the persistent campaign by some Christian leaders in Nigeria and those Nigerian Christians in diaspora who have been calling attention to how their own kids and their kinsmen and kin, they are being massacred in Nigeria. So those are the other things that must be put out. But for those who are the attackers, these are terrorist groups, Boko Haram and their latest cousin, I think that's ISWAP, they are part of the attackers. And then these other Lukaka or Lukawa, I can't remember their name specifically, another terrorist group. These are jihadists that have been attacking villages, attacking Christians, killing people. But I must put it out again too that non-Christians too are under attack by these people because they feel their own kind of Islam that they want to introduce is not the kind being practiced by these other Muslims. Yeah.
Okay. So the issue is not so much that the government somehow works in cahoots with these jihadist
No, not at all.
No. But the issue is that they're failing to protect
of the government is in not protecting its own citizens very well, which is the duty of a government, protection of lives and properties. Nigerian government has persistently failed in that area.
Okay. How have people reacted to this suggestion by the U.S. President threatening Nigeria with military action if the country does not protect Christians in that country? How has government responded, and how are the people on the ground responding?
Our government have put out a statement, if you have observed very well. The Foreign Affairs Minister have spoken. The presidential spokesman or spokesperson too have spoken. But as for me, I'm not sure we actually need to counter that narrative, the genocide narrative and the President Trump narrative. I think what our government actually needs to do is to prove President Trump wrong. That's all. And you can only prove him wrong by action. That's the only credible response. Step up and protect your citizens. That's all. Step up. I mean, beyond beyond issuing press statement or press releases here and there, that is, I mean, for us in Nigeria now, or for me as a Nigerian, let me speak for myself now. These issues are being discussed now. And that's good. It shows that, look, our house is not in order. So in as much as the narrative might be persisting, as much as there might be issues when a country is designated country of particular concern, but you just have to protect your citizens. That is what Nigerian government should do. For me, that's all. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that apparently I'm not President Trump's spokesperson. I don't work with the State Department or the CIA or whatever. But I'm not so sure that the American government will invade Nigeria in that sense.
Yeah.
Where are they going to attack? These guys they keep on moving. I will actually think, which is the next stage when you designate a country as a country of particular concern, is identifying the sponsors, isolating them, look at the financial trail of money, ensuring their assets are frozen, ensuring they don't have access to this, and those that might be their sponsors in Nigeria might deny them visa. That's all. And I think that should be a welcome option.
Why has the government failed to really just get a hold on this and stop the attacks by these Islamist organizations? Could it be, what is it? Are they being protected at some level? Why has the government failed?
I can only speak as a citizen. And I think there's a plethora of reasons for that. Number one, our present government is more interested in the 2027 battle. That's when the elections are due again. So we have had more politicking than governance. And that's sad. So when the government fails to see itself that before election, there must be lives. Before election, there must be citizens that you are going to govern, that you are going to lead, then we are going to have this problem. Number two, we have had instances whereby our military, and I'm sure you know, we recently have a change of guards of the service chiefs, the chief of army staff, the chief of air staff, the chief of navy staff. They were all asked to step aside and new appointments were made on their behalf, in their stead. And so if you do not equip your military well, they can't fight these battles. And then the other third reason for me is the compromise between our political leaders. When the former President Jonathan, that's the last but one president before the late President Buhari, when he said there's Boko Haram in his government, people thought it was a joke. And so there have been accusations, and we have had retired defense chiefs who have spoken up, who have come out on the public and said that the government knows who the sponsors are. And so there's that compromise. There is that incestuous relationship between terrorism sponsors and people in government. So this is what we have. And so when people there have been instances whereby the list of the sponsors have been given to our government, we have not had this being blown into the open. There have been instances where the Boko Haram soldiers have been arrested. They now try to import a model whereby you say you are retraining terrorists. And for us, even at the Conversation Africa, we have published research that show that reintegrating Boko Haram terrorists who have surrendered their arms into the Nigerian army, into the Nigerian society, is fraught with dangers. Yeah. So those are the reasons that we are, as it were, citizens at certain period or in specific areas, they are sitting ducks.
Yeah.
So you could imagine Clement.
Yeah, no, got it there. Wale Fatade, thank you so much for speaking to us. That's the commissioning editor at the Conversation Africa.
702.
Call Clement
on 011
883
0702.
And you know, one thing I've just been asking myself this morning is, why is there a refugee path for white South Africans to move to America, but not Nigerian Christians, even though President Trump claims that there is a mass slaughter against them? And that must tell you a lot about the approach of the U.S. government. They are willing to say there's a genocide against white people in South Africa. They'll give them that pathway to that refugee status. But when you look at what's happening in Nigeria, where Trump claims there's a mass killings, mass slaughter of Christians, there's not even a conversation about creating that pathway and give them, that refugee status in the U.S. What does that tell you? Yelang, you're calling us from Fendale. You want to react to that? Good morning.
Hello, good morning, Clement. I trust that you and the listeners are doing well. Clement, I believe this is nothing to do with the Christians in Nigeria, and more a strategy for, the imperial nations to position themselves in Nigeria and then able to target the Sahel region. So if you look at what's been happening in Burkina Faso, Niger, and all the G5 countries in the Sahel region, you'll notice that they are realizing themselves as Africans without the input of the West, and actually they are actively disengaging with the West.
Yeah, in fact, they've been tightening ties with Russia.
Absolutely. So if you look at strategy, it would not serve the West. It wouldn't be in their interest to make it apparent that this is who they're targeting. But if you look at who the United Nations UNISS strategy covers, you're talking about countries like Senegal, Gambia, Mauritania, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and Nigeria. Right? So, of course, if you have an issue that sounds credible, this religious issue and coming to rescue the Christians, then that becomes your access point, and that becomes the story that is spun. But in actual fact, it's a way to position yourself as, the imperial West, and then gain access to these countries who have actively rejected the West and whatever it is, and in particular France. So I think we're looking at it from a very different perspective as Africans, and not focusing on the geopolitics of whether Trump will accept Africans into America. But there's a bigger picture, and that picture is they need access to Africa, and what better way to do it than to come into Nigeria and then be able to destabilize these nations from Nigeria. I just felt that it is important for us to know as Africans that there is a strategy at play, and we then as Africans need to view it from that perspective.
Yeah, and thank you for introducing that element as well. Someone else tweeted me about the resources, the oil reserves in Nigeria, and that this is something that Trump is trying to use so that they can exert some pressure, so the U.S. or rich people that are close to President Donald Trump can benefit from the Nigerian resources. But Yelang raises an important point about the Sahel region. In fact, we've had a conversation before on the show about the shifting power in the region and what that means. When you've got the Sahel states tightening ties with Russia, that's a clear sign of shifting power in the region. And of course, the West is not going to like that. So what are the consequences of all these threats and these intentions of intervention from the U.S. perspective? Leo on the WhatsApp line says, Clement, in Nigeria, the government is not protecting the Christians. They get slaughtered in their church. Remember, no one believed the stories coming out of Nazi Germany, only truly believed at the end of World War II. That's Lee there in Alberton.